It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. The S&P is great. We here at Pure, we use the S&P 500 and large company stocks as the foundation of most of our portfolios. But what we don't do is concentrate exclusively on the S&P. So I would say the answer to your question, Andy, is no, you shouldn't just buy the S&P, and here's why. The reason is that there's over 10,000 publicly traded stocks in the world. The S&P is 500 of them. It's actually 505 due to a technicality. But there's 500 odd stocks in the S&P 500. There's 14,000 stocks in the world. Do you really want to invest in less than 5% of the companies in the world? Maybe, but you're concentrating all of your holdings in large company U.S. growth stocks. And there are times when that hasn't worked out. We've got a slide here that looks at the decade from 2000 to 2010. A lot of people call this the lost decade. It was one of the few times in history that the S&P ended a decade lower than where it started. And so if you had invested in the S&P 500 in 2000, at the end of the decade, you would have had less money than you started with. And in fact, you'd have less money than if you just invested in plain old T-bills. Right? That's the opposite of what people are trying to accomplish when they're investing. What you could have done instead was invested in lots of other different kinds of stocks or bonds. There are asset classes out there during that so-called lost decade that were up 50%, that were up 100%, that were up 200%. Emerging market small company stocks during that decade were up 400%. So for a lot of investors, it wasn't a lost decade, provided they didn't just focus on the S&P 500, that they were broadly diversified. Now, I'm not making a prediction there. I'm just saying that you want to consider where you're invested and whether or not being concentrated makes sense. There are times when being concentrated in a particular thing might pay off. There are times when it may not pay off so well.
Are you prepared for retirement? Schedule a free financial assessment with an experienced financial professional right online at purefinancial.com.